All of this, as you may remember, just before the ANC conference started, suddenly was a statement from the Jacob Zuma Foundation that Zuma was instituting a private prosecution of Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa, in his application to stop the private prosecution, says that this was all about the conference and a bid to stop him from campaigning for the position of leader. Of course, as you recall, he was re-elected. Mpumelelo Zikalala is a legal expert. He's been watching all of this. Mpumelelo, good afternoon to you. I scratch my head over all of this sometimes. How do you see this all playing out?
I think there are two things which are going to be important. Firstly is the agency in which the current president, Mr. Ramaphosa, will have to go to. Now, you look at the elements in which the court would look at, the balance of probabilities, any interest that should be protected, irreparable harm that may be suffered, and other alternative remedies. I think the president is leaning on that one. The Criminal Procedure Act under Section 106 is very clear that you can raise this particular of no title to prosecute as a defense, which will then dispense the matter which is there. Now, on the irreparable harm, I think the president will have to go to town, especially with his current affidavit, in terms of showing this is the harm in which I'm going to suffer, which is going to be irreparable. But in the whole merits of the case, I think the current president does have a point in terms of saying, but I'm not the one who's supposed to chastise prosecutors when they've behaved badly. We have the NPA head who is there. You also have the Legal Practice Council that can come to your aid. Why do you need me to come to the fore? I've done nothing wrong in this particular matter. In fact, I've behaved instead of the right side of the law by not meddling in any prosecution cases which are currently taking place. Which would then beg the question of why didn't the president go after the NPA? It is the NPA that issues the certificates. It is the NPA which was meant to issue a certificate which is suspect specific, that would name the name of the suspect and also the name of the respondent or the person who's going to prosecute. As the NPA cannot issue a blanket prosecution certificate and simply say to a litigant, go and institute proceedings against anyone that you deem fit, despite the fact that they are written in any affidavit or in any docket which is contained by the NPA. Their certificate has to be specific, and in this case it's not.
So, just to make sure that I understand what you're saying then, I mean, it seems very unlikely that Zuma can really privately prosecute Ramaphosa.
It is unlikely, because if you look at it at the end of the day, you cannot prosecute someone for doing the right thing. The president was correct in terms of saying, I'm not the one who's going to bring to order any prosecutor that has misbehaved. There are processes that needs to be followed. However, where Mr. Ramaphosa is limping is in the agency and the manner in which he has handled this particular matter on two bases. Firstly, on the agency by instituting this particular matters on an urgent basis, where there are elements that are missing, especially when it comes to irreparable harm and alternative remedies. But secondly, why aren't you dealing with the NPA as the cause of the problem? Because it's the NPA that has caused all particular issues, but the certificate that has been issued. So go after the NPA and say to the NPA, you must stick to the law it is written. In fact, the Criminal Procedure Act is very clear in terms of saying once a certificate has been issued, it can be recalled and reissued again or issued with certain conditions that must be attached to it. So they must use their prerogative and be able to resolve this particular dispute that is there. If you remove the problem caused by the NPA, you're not going to have any matter which is going to sit on Thursday.
Does this case really need 3 judges to make a decision on Thursday? I mean, that's a full bench. Does it really need that?
Not at all. It was quite surprising because, you see, a full bench is usually used as an appeal bench at the end of the day. So then the question is, why do we need so many judges? Is it such an important matter that one judge cannot be able to handle it? But most importantly, you are dealing with legal matters that have been legal standing that have been discussed a number of times. If you look at agency, there are a plethora of cases that are there that you can be able to look at, and they will tell you what you look at when it comes to agency, when it comes to interpretation as to whether this particular application should be granted or not. It's very clear what should be followed. So it was quite puzzling to then sit back and say, what is the president of the Gauteng division thinking when they want to institute a full bench? Is it of such important nature that is going to warrant the sort of the bending of the rules that we put it in that particular sense, so that a full bench is created simply for this particular matter?
There's another interesting element to all of this around the timing of it. So as I understand it, Ramaphosa says that Zuma brought this just before, hours before the start of the ANC conference to try and take him out of the running because of the ANC step-aside rule. Does the timing of a thing like this have any bearing on the actual court case?
It would assist in terms of showing motive, but the motive in which we are trying to show in this particular case does not assist the president. because the motive that should be there is purely on a technical basis in terms of saying to the NPA, you are the custodians of this particular certificates that are issued by you. So if you are going to issue a defective certificate, I'm going to send you to court or take you to court for making sure that I'm able to protect my rights. Without the certificate, there will be no prosecution at the end of the day. So if the cause of concern is to the interpretation of the certificate that is there, one of the activities or initiatives that we are going to take to remedy that is going to say, let me try and fix the certificate so that I have a certificate that I can be able to defend at a later stage. If I'm able to solve that particular impasse now, I don't even have to go to court and raise a Section 106 defense as is allowed by the Criminal Procedure Act. So on that basis, which is why one does not understand why the NPA is not intimately involved in this particular matter. Why is there no order? Is there any order against the NPA in terms of saying to the NPA, remedy the defect that you have caused, because I'm in this particular predicament that I'm in now due to one of your individuals having issued a certificate which is defective, and I say that in inverted commas.
It's such a strange case. I mean, we suddenly have politicians claiming that they can launch private prosecutions of each other. I mean, Mpumelelo, I don't think our law was designed for this, was it?
Not at all. Which is why a certificate, when it is issued, is going to be suspect-specific, because the name of the suspect must appear there. What it tells you as a receiver of the certificate, and also any other individual that is there, including the court, is that the NPA has sat down, looked at the sequence of events and the evidence which is available, that it can be able to prosecute this particular suspect. And it is of the opinion that if it goes to court, it's not going to come back with a conviction, meaning that the evidence at hand cannot come back with a conviction which is going to say you are guilty beyond reasonable doubt. So on that basis, we are not going to risk ourselves going to court as the NPA if we know that we are not going to be successful. However, we are giving you a reprieve as a private individual that if you think that you can be able to win, go ahead, but we are going to attach certain conditions, and at any given point in time, that's what the Act says, it can be withdrawn or certain conditions can then be inserted, which is why it was strange why a certificate which is currently being used by the former president to prosecute the current president did not have a name of a suspect, because the next question is, what sort of evidence did you assess? Who is the suspect in this particular matter? Are you branding every single person who is listed there? Have you really applied your mind in terms of those particular suspects? Are there any other conditions that you would like to add? Why don't you add conditions in this particular matter? So which is why I say that particular certificate which is being used and is going to be a subject matter for Thursday may be defective. And I think it's only the NPA that can be able to remedy that, and they would be within their rights in order to do so.
Mpumelelo, I'm not a judge, but we've seen the judges and we've seen courts make the point that they shouldn't be having to decide political cases like this. Do you think when this matter came up somewhere, there was a group of judges in a tea room who had a collective groan, just realizing what this was going to mean for them?
I think they might have looked at it and said, we are going to have to decide a matter, regardless of how we decide on it. At the end of the day, the political interference may be inferred. However, if you go back to the law and only stick to the law, we can be able to save ourselves and arrive at a conclusion as to why we have decided this matter in the manner in which we have done. Now, this one is clear. If ever you bring a matter on an urgent basis, there are two legs to it. The main merits, in which they would favor the president, and also agency. But you can't get through the main merits without getting over the hurdle of agency. And in this case, the matter is not urgent. There's no irreparable harm which is going to be suffered. If there is, it hasn't been stated on the papers. And secondly, there is an alternative remedy that is there. Why do you want to jump the queue when there is a process that has been carefully laid out by the law that allows you to get reprieve at the end of the day? But most importantly, you are, well, let's say, is suing someone or saying that someone is a cause for concern who is not really, let's call them the innocent party. Because what Mr. Jacob Zuma is going to say, I applied for a private prosecution certificate and I was issued one, and this is the one in which I'm using. However, the person who issued the defective certificate is the one that should be resolved in this particular matter, and it's the real person in which the dispute should be raised against.
Mpumelelo Zikalala, really appreciate the time. Thank you, legal expert. Fascinating case. We'll find out more, of course, when they argue in court on Thursday.